Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Garibaldi Red podcast, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Max Hayes, your host, and as Forest welcome Aston Villa this weekend for another top-of-the-table clash. Who'd have thought we'd have said that a couple of months ago, or even a year, really, ago. Mental, isn't it, where Forest are at the minute, but high-flying and doing well, and we will hope to continue that run this weekend as we welcome the Aston Villa to the City grounds, ready for this almost festive run-in. It gets busy. The last home game as well before Christmas, and then obviously it's Tottenham on that Boxing Day as well to discuss all of that. A few things around Forest this week, which was nice to see with Nuno and Warriors United, and the great work that Forest are doing as well this weekend with turning the fan zone into a food bank. That's a bit of a tongue twister. We'll discuss all of that and much, much more. Joined by Mark Turner, as ever, from the States. Mark, good to see you, mate. Back in your usual hotspot of your home with that brilliant brown door in the background and brown sofa. How are you, mate? And you text me, didn't you, after the Man United game to say you must be like living the dream in that away end. And we didn't get you on, obviously, after we gave somebody else a chance for once. What did you make of that United game, and just how are you feeling at the minute with everything?
Well, firstly, the podcast that you did record after the Man United game was excellent, and all the better for me not being on it.
Thank you,
I very much enjoyed that. Of course, it's easier to enjoy these episodes, Max, off the back of such an incredible victory. And it's funny, in the lead up to the Manchester games, if you remember, I said I felt like we beat City and I felt like we'd lose to United. And I kind of posed a question to you, and I think it was Holly who was on the podcast at the time. What would you rather have? Would you rather have that? Would you rather have the reverse? Do you want 2 draws? I also speculated that despite the fact that City were, have been hitting bum notes recently, there's every chance that they batter us 3-0. Which of course came to pass. So I was then desperate. I was in the Max camp for all 3 points at Old Trafford. Please, thank you very much, football gods. So I can only imagine what the atmosphere must have been like in the away end at Old Trafford when Forest secured yet another historic victory this season. Tell us about it, mate.
Oh, it was incredible, absolutely incredible, and I haven't stopped wearing my Forest shirt. I have worn it every single day that I've been in Manchester. Honestly, I went on a run last night, which that's another topic conversation.
Were you being chased?
Running in the winter, and I made the silly decision to just kind of wear nothing else other than shorts and a t-shirt last night, because I thought, no, there's no point putting like a a skin on or anything. I just thought I'm going to be brave. And I honestly got into about 4K and I was like, I am, insert the word, cold. And it was unbelievably freezing, but I still had my Forest shirt on and I was still repping Forest in Manchester throughout this week. It's been brilliant. It's been nice just seeing the salty tears from Manchester United fans, shall we say, and just coming out of the ground. And I think also at full time, it was another, just like away at Leicester, just like away at Liverpool, just like away at Southampton this season, even Chelsea and Brighton thrown into that mix. And obviously many more games. There was just a really, really special moment between, in particular, the players, Nuno, and the fans, and Nuno's coaching staff that we're all not too familiar with, maybe. But they were there enjoying the moment. They were celebrating. I think one of Nuno's assistant had took his snood off and was throwing it around, was waving it around to the with Nuno. So, it was brilliant. It honestly was amazing. And I think it just sums up how far we've come as a club this season. To go to Old Trafford. And I was actually saying this to a good mate of the podcast. I'll give him a name check because otherwise he'll be upset. It's a bit like you with Trevor. But I was chatting to Pat this week, who also lives in Manchester, and he was saying, this isn't just a one-off that we beat Manchester United. You forget we beat them last season as well under Nuno.
That's
and that obviously one of Nuno's first few games. I can remember we talked about it after. I think you were on the podcast after, Mark, which was during that festive period. So, just excellent moment with the fans. Great to see. Still on a high from it. I couldn't get to sleep till about 1-2 in the morning that evening. It's just been a brilliant week. So lots to enjoy.
And it was. I think it was a particularly momentous victory as well, Max, because there was a lot of chatter around how Forest were going to line up versus City and versus United, and given that they're away games, do we take the same kind of approach that we did with Liverpool, right? Another historic victory earlier this season. And I'm glad to see that Nuno didn't really seem to do that. Maybe against City, we were kind of forced to do that a little bit. We were sitting deeper than maybe we would have liked to have seen, but I don't know that that was necessarily the strategy. Certainly against United, the boys went for it. And so I hate to compare results. Like, me personally, I'd rather beat Liverpool than Man United, but absolutely I want to beat
To do
both.
both, yeah.
Yeah, I want to beat both. But when you look at the, and again, both fine victories. The tactics were executed perfectly. But I think that win against United was that bit more special because Forest did Forest, right? We weren't asking the players to do something that's largely unfamiliar to them and sit really deep and absorb a ton of pressure. That's what we did the last 2 seasons. Now we're starting to get back into the Forest groove. What does that mean? Well, it means, moving the ball quickly, those pretty triangles, using the width of the field, counter-attacking, just beautiful, silky football, the kind of stuff that I grew up on watching Brian Clough teams. I'm not saying for anyone who's going to freak out and start dropping notes in the comments below that I'm suggesting Nuno is Cloughy and this is the high point of the 70s and 80s yet. But that is certainly more familiar to me. What we saw against United, that's the Forest DNA, and it was exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. I agree. And I think we could have had 2 or 3 more. And I just think, I think there's that confidence in the team. And, I know it's a completely different situation here, but hear me out. It reminds me of the season that we went up to the Championship. And following Forest, I missed 2 games that season. It was Millwall and one other, I can't remember which. It could have been Barnsley, actually.
Was it Millwall away?
Yeah.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, too scared to go down there. Probably won't make it out alive. Yeah, and I can remember that season, following Forest away, you had every faith that we'd go into games and not necessarily win, but give a good account of yourself and at least score, and at least you just felt confident, and you kept buying away tickets because that enthusiasm was almost back, and that passion. And I'm not saying that wasn't there the first season because there was a bit of the surprise factor of visiting the big grounds. But the fact that we're going to these big grounds, the so-called top 6, big 6, and Forest are giving a good account of themselves and picking up points on the board and not being afraid to go, actually, we're Nottingham Forest and we're not gonna roll over here. This isn't just like a cup game and United have lots of the ball. Forest had chances. Forest had lots of the ball in that game. There was stuff we could have worked on, particularly in the first half. But other than that, I just thought, excellent performance, and just kind of re-emphases the point of that we can go to these top 6 clubs now and we can do well. So long may it continue, mate. Rant over. Well,
yeah,
not
absolutely.
rant.
Not a rant. We had a positive rant.
Positive rant for once.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a change to when we had to do a rant last season when Forest put that social media post out. We won't go there. Right, let's talk Villa, because another big game. They obviously in Champions League action on Tuesday night. They come out victorious against RB Leipzig. So a big win for them, but fitness potentially a concern. Is this a game, Mark, that you'd have maybe thought 6 months ago Forest would struggle, but now when you look at the table, similar to, we were just talking about the top 6, but similar to the, maybe the home, maybe the game against, well, I think maybe the last few games against United and City, you have confidence going into it?
Yeah, I mean, I do have confidence going into it. It's actually interesting looking at the top 6. You talk about the lofty heights Forest are in right now. The top 6 are all European champions and Arsenal. So, so that's kind of awesome, really, for Forest and Villa to be rounding out that top 6.
Who are level on points, by the way, at the moment. Just
we are level on points. Yeah, the record's actually very similar. Forest have scored a few goals fewer, but also conceded a few goals fewer, which gives them that one goal positive difference, which sees them one place above Villa. I can actually see this game. I know we've not gotten to predictions. We usually wrap the pod with that, but I can see this game being a draw, and I can see any one of 3 of Brentford, Brighton, and Bournemouth, all of who are positioned below us, winning and leapfrogging us. But I don't want to be negative. But I feel like, it's interesting. If you look at Villa's season, I think, obviously they're doing great in the Champions League, and props to them. But if you look at their Premier League season, I think I can't speak for Villa fans, but in talking with fans in general, I think people would generally feel like Villa are not having that great of a season. It's okay, but it's not kind of what was expected. And again, pressures of the Champions League no doubt having a bearing on that. And yet, Max, to your point, they're almost identical in their record in terms of points and so on with Forest, and Forest fans would say we're having an absolute bonkers season. So it is interesting with perspective and perception, what fans will think about the respective teams. But
that maybe shows, Mark, doesn't it, how open the Premier League season is this year, and I mean that in the fact of you haven't got City running away with it. Maybe Liverpool are too far ahead, but still catchable, if that's a word. And you've got Arsenal into the mix that have got a good side and are doing well. You've got Chelsea that have kind of maybe not the underdogs, but maybe unexpected, despite all the money they've spent. Then you've got teams like Forest and Villa and Brighton that are at the dizzy heights of 5th and 4th and 6th. So this season's very open. And that's where I think we were talking about it on the podcast the other day, Mark. But that's where there can be someone that surprises a few this season, and has a really good season and finishes in and around those places. And Forest could maybe be that, almost capitalising on it being a bit of an open Premier League season.
Honestly, Max, I'm struggling here to think of a streakier season, certain Premier League season, ever. And what I mean by that is, generally speaking, you have 3 or 4 teams that are pretty solidly consistent and they're sort of vying for those top spots. And then you maybe get a couple breakaway who really hit a rich vein of form. And the winner's going to be one of those two. And then below them, you have teams that, they kind of find their spot and then they just kind of battle it out within a few spaces of that spot. That you outside of the top 6, the Premier League's then kind of broken up into tranches of 3, right? So you have those that are kind of jockeying for position, trying to get in those European spots. And you have those that are solidly mid-table that, might get threatened a little bit by relegation, might maybe bump themselves up into that top 10, but that's about all you're going to get. And then, of course, those who are battling relegation all season. And that just tends to be how the Premier League settles down once you get sort of a month, certainly a couple of months into the season. This year, though, Max, look at the streakiness. I mean, Chelsea started kind of all over the spot, and now they're hot on form. Tottenham, they beat City and then they lose to everybody else. Can't hold on to a victory. Brentford had the best home record in the league, which is mental. Can't do anything on the road, which is very Forest, if you think about last year. And then you look at the teams that are going to be battling it out this weekend, Forest and Villa. Again, similar story. They put together a couple of great wins. Then it's a couple of disappointing performances. So it is a super streaky season. The only team, of course, that's bucking that trend is Liverpool. So it is going to be fascinating to see not just what happens this weekend, but what happens this season, because this Premier League's all over the shop.
It is, absolutely, mate. It's going to be an interesting one. I think it's just enjoyable for once. Thank God City are not running away with it. It just gets boring every season. Who do you fear from Villa? And I think he hasn't featured that much recently, but I still fear Matty Cash. If he plays,
Didn't he score a goal the other night?
Did he? I think so. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was in the Champions League, but I think it was the game before. I think it always adds something to it when like a former player returns, albeit that it's a good few years now. I can remember the days of Matty Cash, Sabri Lamucci turning him into a right back. Excellent player. Who do you fear from Villa, Mark? They've got a strong squad, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. That Alex Moreno is a quality player. Oh wait, hang on a second. Hey, honestly, Max, the one player that gives me the gist is more than any other, and I know they have great players across the board. Ollie Watkins and a number of others, but it's John Duran. And when John Duran wasn't featuring at the start of the season, I was praying that Nuno would bring him in on loan. Can you imagine having John Duran in the mix right now with Taiwo and Chris Wood? That would be mega. And he's now started to establish himself with the Villains and is scoring worldies just about every other weekend. And there's no chance he's going to end up at the City ground, here in the near future. Villa know what they have at this point, but he's the one who really concerns me because he's very hard to pigeonhole. I don't really know what he is. He kind of drifts around. He goes out wide. He certainly sits in that number 10 spot. He can score from 30 yards. He can get on the end of things in the 10-yard box. He's a special player. He really is. So, yeah, I think he's going to cause our defense some headaches. But yeah, I know we'll see. Be interesting. I can't wait to see him up against Yates. That's going to be fascinating because he does drop into those holes. And when he does, it's going to be interesting to see how Forest address that, whether they have one of the centre-backs step out or whether Yates gets a hold of him, quite literally probably, and tries to address the situation.
Yeah, Duran, brilliant player. And I'm sure for him and Villa, I'm sure Villa will be hungry like a wolf on Saturday.
No, here we go.
Come on, I had to do that. You'd set me right up. You'd thrown it in the court, Mark. Come on.
A little bit early for cracker jokes, Max. We've got a couple of weeks till Christmas yet.
Yeah, true, actually. True. How do you see the game going, Mark? You mentioned that you could see it as a draw, and I agree. I think both sides are very matched at the minute. And I think Villa actually need the win more than Forest. I think if you speak to Villa fans, the producer of this podcast, Dan, is a Villa fan. They've had a bit of a mixed season, as you alluded to earlier. So they'll be hoping to come to the City Ground and probably get revenge because we've had some standout performances against Villa back at the City Ground, not necessarily at Villa Park. It will be an interesting one. But I do agree with you, Mark. I think it will be tight. I think it will be quite nervy. And I can't really see... which is surprising because I'd say this season I'd expect a lot of goals in a game that Forest are in at the minute. I can see this being quite a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I have this pegged as a 1-1 with your boy Silva popping up and getting the goal. He's so desperate to score. It's interesting, actually, on the last pod, you were talking about, obviously you guys spent some time talking about the Milenkovic header. Delighted to see him finally get on the board for Forest. He's been an absolutely outstanding player for us this year. But you mentioned, Jota's winning headers against Van Dijk's and other similarly sized defenders. And it is mad, the vertical that boy has. So whether it's with his feet or with his head, I'd love to see him notch one this weekend. Of course, I'd love to see Forest eke out a victory. It's not beyond us. But Villa are a really decent outfit. And we've seen, again, what they've done in the Champions League this season. They've taken down some quality opposition. So we want a win at home. But it's not the end of the world to end up with a 1-1 and Jota Silva on the score sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was going to insert another Duran reference, but I'm not. I promise I'm not. I can't anymore, otherwise it get clipped. Yeah, I agree.
I'm amazed you even know who they are.
Oh, come on. It's absolutely... I'm actually big into my 80s music. Rio, what a song. What else did they have? Ordinary World.
Yeah. Wait. Is that Duran?
I think so. Right. Okay. I'll have to ask my mum. What else? There was one other. Obviously, do you have a song called Notorious? Maybe.
You're really throwing the dynamic of the podcast. Yeah, you're supposed to be appealing to the youth, Max.
Yeah, to the youth of today. And here I am talking about Duran.
You talk about the streets or Taylor Swift or I don't know anything else that appeals to the teens, the tweens, and the young uns like yourself.
Taylor Swift, not for me, mate. I'd still say I was born in the wrong generation. I would still say I was born in the wrong generation. You should listen to my radio shows when I ever get called up to do commercial radio at the minute or community. It's just like an 80s love fest.
Are you like Smashy and Nicey? Do you even know that reference? The Smashy and Nicey. Others watching this will know the Bachman Turner Overdrive. Let's go. Anyway, check it out. The Fast Show, I think it was on. A couple of radio DJs, Smashy and Nicey. Anyway, I feel like people are getting off topic a little bit here.
Yes. Talking about 80s music. Predictions. I agree. 1-1. In terms of team news, Mark, you've got to stick with what beat Manchester United. I cannot see any changes. The only one I'd throw in there, which people may be surprised, Ozzy Davies going to love this, potentially dropping Ryan Yates. Which is painful to say, but a few poor performances and maybe Nuno will look at, is this a game for him? But then you were just on about it then against Duran. I think I think he's gonna. I think it's his type of game to try and break up the midfield. But he has come under criticism recently, hasn't he?
I mean, against City he did. I don't really see that he did too much wrong against United. And I don't know, you guys were speculating again on the last pod. Boy, am I sending traffic that way or what? On the last pod, speculating, does Ryan Yates struggle against the top six? Which is a fair question, but it's also kind of a redundant question. It's like saying, am I going to struggle more defending somebody who plays for Ipswich than I am Lionel Messi? By definition, when you come up against better players, you're going to have a tougher time of things. That doesn't mean that Ryan Yates is incapable of performing in those matches. And again, though he struggled against City, I think he played well against United. But Max, I actually wouldn't hate seeing Yates being dropped, although I don't like using the word drop, because I think what we're starting to see from Nuno now is some intentional rotation. And certainly we're seeing it on the flanks. And so, I could see Alanga coming back in. I honestly think that Sosa's going to get his day in the sun as well, whether that's this weekend against Villa or not, I don't know. But I think Nuno is starting to do some intentional rotation now. And so, why would you not want Dominguez back in the team? He's done nothing wrong. And if that means benching Ryan Yates for a game or two, then it's not the end of the world. I mean, you want to try and keep this team happy. You want to try and keep these players on their toes. Everyone has stepped in just about, has contributed. So I don't think there's anyone, with the exception of, I wouldn't be a fan of breaking up our central defensive partnership unless needs must. Outside of that, I don't think there's anyone who's undroppable. Even Chris Wood. Like, Chris Wood obviously is vitally important to us, but I think Taiwo needs to get minutes under his belt. Needs to be done at the right time. And there's no doubt Chris Wood is, our number one up top. But again, I think even giving Taiwo a few additional minutes and giving Wood a little bit of a rest, I wouldn't hate to see that too at the right times.
Yeah. Not going off topic, but a slight tangent here, Mark. Do you think Ryan Yates is harshly criticised from the Forest fan base? Whereas there are some other players that might get away with it. When Morgan has a bad game or even has a consistent run of bad games, he wouldn't get the same criticism as Ryan Yates. Is it almost because he's maybe one of our own, and with all due respect to him, of course we love him, but he isn't a name, and I wonder if that is maybe why people jump on the back of him quicker than other players, or
yeah, I mean, I think there's three very quick things I'd say about that. One, we covered that ground a lot, right, about him being one of our own, and about any player that comes through our system, fans love them more than maybe they should when they break into the team because they're one of our own, but then they get more heavy criticism as soon as they start to make mistakes. We've covered that ground and then some, and I think there's definitely there's legitimacy in those observations. I also feel like Ryan Yates is not Paul Scholes, right? He's not Roy Keane. He just is what he is. I think fans need to be careful about making the distinction between Ryan Yates not being a world beater and Ryan Yates not being a Premier League player. Ryan Yates is a Premier League player. He's demonstrated that time and again. Is he a world beater? Will he ever end up in one of the top six? Well, we're in the top six right now, but you know what I mean. Probably not. Probably what we see from Yates right now, especially at his age, is as good as it gets. But he's a Premier League player. And then the final thing I would say is just look at Twitter after Everyday Forest have a win and Yates has, been in that team, and look at what the opposition team fans are saying. They hate him. They hate what he does. They hate what he brings to the party. They hate the fact that, he gets the job done. It's not pretty, but it is effective. And so I'm delighted that Ryan Yates plays for us. Aussie Dave might not be a fan, but I always will be.
Absolutely, mate. Same here. Totally agree. I think that does us nicely. Lots of ground covered. The Man United game, the Villa game, everything else in between, including a bit of Duran Duran. So I'm off to go and listen to them now.
Look out for Minor Max's next podcast, Garibaldi Rad, where we cover all the music from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you know what? There'd be a decent age gap in between us. We could talk about young and old music and everything. Like, I mean,
Indeed,
just
we
quickly,
go all
actually,
the way from Duran Duran all the way back to Tchaikovsky.
What's your favourite ever song, Mark?
Oh my
I'm
goodness!
putting you on the spot here. You can tell we're struggling for content, and I'm joking.
Next week we'll be doing favorite Christmas recipes. I don't know what my
How to
favorite
cook a
song is.
turkey.
You know, I'm a big indie fan. I came through in the 90s scene, so you know, anything by Oasis.
Ugh.
I mean, a lot of these bands are having a resurgence right now. It's weird to think that my music that I came through on is now considered nostalgic, like Oasis, Shed 7, Pulp, Radiohead. Kind of
It's
crazy.
almost like they
but
need a bit of money, Mark, so they just go on tour again.
seems like. I mean, I do like the classics as well. Though I love My Girl. That's a cracking tune. I love talking of 80s music. I do love Take on Me by Aha.
Yeah.
One of the greatest songs ever written. Period. End of story. And if anyone hasn't seen it, go YouTube the intro from Family Guy, the TV show Family Guy. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
It's mega. Where I'm not going to spoil it, but one of the characters in Family Guy ends up in the Aha Take on Me video momentarily. It's phenomenal. So yeah, folks need look at all the great content you get when you follow Garibaldi Red. Amazing.
Honestly, recommendations.
Value for money.
Music. Do you know what song I was listening to the other day, and I realised how much of a class. See, this is an old tune, right? Journey, Don't Stop Believing. What a song! It's been stuck in my head the last few days.
It is.
I've been writing university essays this week, and one coping mechanism is just blasting music out. So apologies to my neighbours who live below and above, because they've probably not been sleeping the past few nights because I've just been blasting out 80s music whilst trying to get writing.
Oh! Another absolute fave. Freed from Desire.
Yes, of course. What a tune! Just takes me back to Wembley.
Banging.
Right, that's enough music recommendations before we get copyrighted for promoting the wrong music or something. As always, we will be back on either late Sunday evening or Monday morning for our Villa review. We shall be joined by a couple more people, as always, to discuss that one. Then we'll be back throughout next week as well. Lots of stuff happening, as always. Keep up to date with us, Garibaldi Red and Nottingham Forest News on Facebook. Like, share and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow and like on Spotify and Apple Podcasts from your two 80s boys. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.